I want you to picture two households in the same suburb of Columbus, Ohio. Same zip code, same property tax bill, similar household income, somewhere around $95,000 a year. The first house belongs to someone who has been working steadily for 22 years. Walk inside, and you'll find a 75-inch television mounted above a gas fireplace that hasn't been lit since 2021. You'll find a three-car garage with two cars, a jet ski, and a set of golf clubs still in the manufacturer's plastic. Walk into the kitchen, and you'll notice a Vitamix still in the box, an air fryer on the counter, and a sous vide machine shoved against the backsplash still tagged with a Christmas gift sticker. This person checks their 401k balance with a knot in their stomach. They have less than $50,000 saved for retirement potential, and they are 55 years old. The second house belongs to someone with a lower salary, $78,000. Walk inside and you'll notice space, a couch, a dining table, a laptop. You'll notice walls without gallery collections and a garage with one car and a bicycle. This person wakes up every Tuesday morning knowing that mathematically they could stop working before age 58. Their investment account crosses $680,000 this year. They sleep fine. Same suburb. The person earning less has nearly 14 times the retirement security. This isn't a story about income. It's a story about the hidden relationship between what you accumulate and what you can afford to build that most Americans never understand until it's too late. The first person isn't reckless. They don't gamble. They don't blow money on nightclubs. They just never learned that every dollar you spend on a possession isn't just a purchase. It's a trade of future freedom for present comfort. The second person discovered something that reframes the entire game. They learned that the path to early retirement isn't about earning more. It's about reducing the surface area of your financial life until your money has nowhere to go except forward. Today, I'm going to walk you through the minimalist money rules that separate people who retire before 60 from people who are still clocking in at 67, regardless of income bracket. These aren't about sacrifice or deprivation. They're about understanding that most of what we buy isn't buying us happiness, it's buying us the illusion of it, while quietly stealing the years we actually wanted. Let me start with a concept that will reframe how you think about money for the rest of your life. Every dollar you spend costs you twice. The first cost is obvious. You spend $400 on a gadget, and $400 leaves your account. Done, right? Wrong. But there's a second cost that most people completely ignore, and it is almost always larger than the first. The second cost includes lost compound growth. That $400 gadget invested at a 10% average annual return, which is roughly the S&P 500's historical average, becomes $2,800 in 20 years. You didn't just spend $400, you spent $2,800 of future freedom. I am not done yet. The second cost includes the carrying cost of stuff. Physical possessions require storage, maintenance, insurance, and eventually disposal. Research from UCLA's Center on Everyday Lives and Families found that clutter is directly correlated with elevated cortisol, the stress hormone, particularly in women. But beyond psychology, the average American household spends an estimated $1,800 per year on storage alone, not counting home square footage dedicated to housing objects they rarely use. Rent isn't just for living space, you're paying for your stuff space too. Nope, not over yet.
The second cost includes lifestyle inflation drag. When people upgrade their lifestyle, bigger car, bigger home, nicer clothes, they reset their baseline. Studies in behavioral economics show that people adapt to higher spending levels almost immediately, meaning once you upgrade your lifestyle, you become uncomfortable with anything that doesn't meet up to that standard. Still not done. The second cost includes the retirement delay tax. If you spend $1,500 extra per month, just $50 a day, which is easy to do without noticing, that's $18,000 a year not invested. Using the 4% withdrawal rule, every $18,000 you fail to invest represents $450,000 of retirement portfolio you never built. That is an entire retirement pushed back by years. When you add up these hidden costs, compounding loss, carrying costs, lifestyle drag, and retirement delay, a single thoughtless decade of spending doesn't cost you money, it costs you time. And time is the only thing you can't buy back. Now, that brings us to the minimalist money rules you must live by if you want to retire by your dream age. Rule 1. Measure your life in hours, not dollars. This reframe changes every purchase decision permanently. A dollar isn't a unit of currency, it's a unit of your life. If you earn $30 an hour after tax, that $900 phone upgrade costs you 30 hours of your life, not 30 hours at your desk, 30 hours of your one life. Here's the math that makes it undeniable. The average American carries $6,329 in credit card debt, according to recent Federal Reserve data. At a typical 24% APR, that person is paying roughly $1,500 a year just in interest, money that does exactly nothing for them. At $30 an hour, that is 50 hours of their life per year given away to a credit card company. Over a decade, that is 500 hours, more than 60 8-hour workdays handed over for the privilege of having bought things they likely don't remember. How most people get this wrong? They compare prices to other prices. This is $20 cheaper. Minimalists compare prices to time. This costs me 4 hours. Is it worth 4 hours of my life? That question kills impulsive spending faster than any budgeting app. Rule 2. Save the raise before you see it. Most people's income rises over their careers, but their net worth barely moves. The reason is predictable. When income goes up, spending goes up to match it almost immediately. Economists call this the hedonic treadmill. You get a $10,000 raise, and within 6 months, the raise has been fully absorbed by a nicer apartment, more restaurant meals, and a streaming service you forgot you subscribed to. Here's the math that makes it undeniable. A person earning $75,000 who saves 20% accumulates dramatically differently than someone earning $90,000 who saves 10%. The 20% saver is building $15,000 a year in investable assets. The 10% saver is only building $9,000, despite earning more. Over 20 years, at a 9% average return, the 20% saver has approximately $836,000. The 10% saver has roughly $502,000. The person earning less retires with $334,000 more. How most people get this wrong? They treat savings as what is left over after spending. Minimalists flip it. They automate savings the day a raise hits, before the money ever touches a checking account, and they keep their lifestyle pinned to the prior year's baseline. What minimalists do instead is maintain what's called a savings rate floor, a percentage that only goes up, never down, regardless of income changes. Get this rule right, and you never have to worry about late retirement again.
Rule 3. Own your housing decision like it's your biggest financial lever, because it is. Housing is where most wealth building dies. The average American spends 30 to 35% of their take-home pay on housing. That's 1/3 of your working life funding 4 walls. The minimalist approach to housing isn't about suffering in a studio forever. It's about being radically intentional about what you're actually buying. Someone who keeps their housing costs at 20% of take-home pay versus 35% frees up 15%. On a $75,000 salary with a $55,000 take-home, that's $8,250 per year. Invested over 20 years at 9%, that single decision, just housing, produces an additional $462,000 in their retirement account. That is almost $500,000 created not by earning more, but by needing less space. Most people make housing decisions based on what the bank says they can afford, which is consistently too high. Banks are not your retirement planners. They benefit when you borrow the maximum.
Minimalists who retire early consistently report that downsizing or intentionally underbuying on housing was the single highest leverage financial move they made. Remember, the target is not nice enough. The target is enough. Rule 4. Own one of everything, not a backup of everything. There is a particular kind of financial toxicity that masquerades as preparedness, owning duplicates. 2 cars when one would do, a gym membership and home gym equipment, a vacation home and a primary home, a wardrobe for every version of yourself you might someday become. These redundancies are wealth killers dressed up as security. The math is brutal. 2 cars in a household where schedules could be coordinated costs conservatively an extra $8,000 per year when you account for insurance, depreciation, registration, and maintenance on the second vehicle. Over 20 years with investment returns, that second car, which mostly sits in a driveway, costs you roughly $448,000 in retirement wealth. Most people are accumulating options they never exercise. They keep the backup blender, the just-in-case gym equipment, the extra bedroom that stays empty for 340 days a year. Minimalists who retire early operate differently. They own what they use regularly, rent or borrow what they need occasionally, and invest the difference without sentiment. Every redundant possession has a carrying cost, financial, mental, and spatial. Check through your belongings. If you haven't used something in 90 days and it isn't seasonal, it is a liability disguised as an asset. Rule 5. Stop upgrading what already works. Here's a disturbing fact. 67% of Americans between the ages of 50 and 74 don't have a formal retirement plan, yet the consumer electronics industry will sell $500 billion worth of products in the U.S. this year. You see, the upgrade economy is built on one lie, that the current version of your phone, your car, your kitchen, or your wardrobe is insufficient. It isn't. It works. You're just used to it already, and manufacturers have engineered you to read that as dissatisfaction. A car payment of $650 a month over 10 years is $78,000 in outflows. Invested instead at 7%, that same $650 a month becomes $112,000 over the same period. The person who drives a paid-off car for $14,000 for 10 years and invests the difference doesn't just save $78,000, they build $190,000 in assets, a $190,000 swing in net worth from one decision. Minimalists maintain a strict policy: only replace when broken, not when bored. Boredom is not a financial emergency. Neither is the neighbor's new truck.
Rule 6. Design your environment so that saving is the default. Willpower is a terrible financial strategy. Research consistently shows it depletes with use. People who rely on discipline to avoid overspending will eventually lose, because every day thousands of companies with billion-dollar marketing budgets are specifically engineering your impulse to spend. You cannot out-discipline a system designed to defeat you. The math behind environment design compounds quietly. Someone who unsubscribes from retail email lists, removes shopping apps from their phone, cancels subscriptions they passively keep, and stops going to stores without a list will, without dramatic effort, spend roughly 15 to 20% less. That is not a figure from a single study. It is a convergence of behavioral economics research across dozens of papers showing that friction reduces consumption. Add 15% savings to a $55,000 take-home salary, and you have an additional $8,250 per year. Same salary, same willpower, just fewer temptations in the line of sight. Most people try to moderate their environment using rules. I'll only buy things on sale, or I'll sleep on purchases over $100. Minimalists restructure the environment itself. Unsubscribe, delete, cancel, avoid the store, use cash for discretionary spending, create friction between desire and purchase, and the desire usually dissolves before money leaves your account. So, don't rely on willpower. Make spending harder than not spending, and watch your savings rate climb without effort.
Here's what nobody tells you about minimalism and money. The relationship is generative. Spending less leads to higher savings rates. Higher savings rates create investment compounding. Investment compounding reduces how many years you need to work. Fewer years working accelerates how quickly you reach financial independence. Each turn of the cycle reinforces the next. The choice between these cycles, the spending cycle and the compounding cycle, determines your retirement age more than your income ever could. There's no one right way to retire early, but those who do it consistently save a large portion of their income to build a portfolio large enough to withdraw from in perpetuity. The 4% rule, now updated to 4.7% by its original creator, means that every $1,000 per month you no longer need to spend is $255,000 less you need to accumulate to retire. Minimalism doesn't just cut spending, it cuts your number. The minimalist who retires early isn't living a life of deprivation. They're not eating plain rice, driving a broken car, or refusing to take vacations. They're living a life of radical intentionality, spending deeply on what matters and not bleeding slowly on what doesn't. They have mornings, they have autonomy, they have time. That's not deprivation. That's the whole point of money. The choice is simply whether you want your freedom at 42 or whether you're comfortable renting it to an employer until you're 67. The rules aren't complicated. Save the raise first, measure purchases in hours, keep housing lean, own less, invest simply, remove temptation, run the cycle long enough, and time does the rest. The question was never whether you could afford to live like a minimalist. It's whether you can afford not to.